One more thing he said last night, Mark McKinnon, is that not only is he going to work on health, he's going to work on women's health. He said that very specifically. Donald Trump, and giving us a view into what his administration would look like. Talk about that.
But Mark, one more thing. This is Dearborn, Michigan. This is as critical a county in a battleground state as could be.
Listen, I think before the last few days, there was a big gender gap with the messaging of the last few days. I think there's now a gender gulf. I can't believe what he's saying in the last few days. He already had a problem with women. And now he talks about elevating Bobby Kennedy on women's issues, on vaccinations. He's talking about doing X, Y, and Z, whether women like it or not. And he's talking about training a rifle at Liz Cheney and a firing squad. My God, he's taking his greatest problem and exacerbating it. And listen, I think that we overcomplicate this right now. This is the first post-Dobbs election. Women were already on fire, and now Donald Trump just took a torch to his messaging about women. And so, listen, I think things are, I get a spidey sense in the last week or so of a campaign in 2016 and felt like it was moving Trump's way. I feel right now like it's moving Harris's way in a big way, and that Trump is just adding fuel to the fire every minute he's out there.
Why do you think that? Is that just because you're watching this in real time with us? I mean, give us a little bit more, Mark.
Well, yes, I'm on the ground. I'm in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania right now, and I've been here for the last few days. I'll be here all week, and I've been out to polling places. And I see women, I see younger voters, and I feel it. I feel it in the data. But listen, I mean, there's more women than men. The more women vote. We know that more women are voting for Harris. And so I think the math is pretty simple. More women are going to vote, and more women are going to vote for Harris. Game, set, match.
Mark McKinnon knows what he's talking about. But again, I just think this race is still going to be close. Like, the margins are small, but turnout in terms of women or people who hear these comments from Donald Trump and say, oh, I don't like that. It could make the difference in a place like Michigan, in a place like North Carolina, definitely in a place like Pennsylvania. Joe Biden didn't win Pennsylvania by all these percentage points. It was like 8 percentage points.
But he has a choice of what he can say that's going to end up on the local TV at 6 and 11. You're more likely to trust your local TV anchor.
LOL that y'all think Donald Trump is strategically caring about what could move the people. He is saying what he believes, and I think we should believe him.
Simone, one quick thing. You know this better than any of the rest of us. What about the ground game? Because we keep getting told, well, because under, Joe Biden, when he was the candidate, they were really working on that ground game, and it get translated over to Kamala Harris, and that it's better, like in Pennsylvania, where Mark is, than Elon Musk's $1 million lottery, as well as those people he's hired who don't know the region, don't know the territory. Go back to the death of a salesman, and you got to know the territory. Well, they don't know the territory. Is that true, or is that fiction?
Well, it is true that Donald Trump has outsourced a majority of his actual campaign ground game infrastructure operations to Turning Point, which is Charlie Kirk's organization of younger conservative people, and then Elon Musk. Now, there is reporting, NBC News hasn't independently verified the reporting, but from Wired, that says that Elon Musk's operation has flown in people into Michigan and Pennsylvania and who are not from the state, and their returns have given them just astronomical numbers to hit, and the returns haven't been what they would like. Now, sans the campaign, what they have done, there are other entities that are running turnout operations, which I think we're seeing those results from the turnout that is happening, frankly, in Nevada, right, from Republicans, and in Georgia. The Republicans' Senate operation, right, they care about many of their overlays between Democrats and Republicans and the presidential. And so where the Trump campaign has lagged, there are other spaces and places that have tried to fill in the gap. But there's been a money issue when it comes to my Republican friends. And I've talked to some of my strategist friends who are Republicans who are working on some of these races. And part of the issue is that Donald Trump his campaign did not transfer the amount of money, frankly, that they thought that they would get to some of these down ballot, these other party committees. And then Donald Trump himself did not commit to a number of these fundraisers that would make a difference. There's still fundraising coming in, but they are subsidizing some of these operations. Concurrently, Vice President Harris, she did inherit that Biden operation. The Biden operation infrastructure was strong. Jen O'Malley Dillon knows organizing and field operations, and they have built a battleground apparatus in Arizona, in Michigan, in Wisconsin, in Pennsylvania, in all 7 of the battleground states that I think is the reason that if she is victorious, it will be because the infrastructure was strong. However, I have also heard stories about in Michigan where, you couldn't get yard sign, from the Democrats if you were in Michigan, that maybe over the last couple of weeks, what should be available to surrogates and whatnot coming in has not been. But that's in Detroit specifically, and then some of the right outside of Detroit. But then in places like Lansing and Kalamazoo, right, they were primed and ready, and the canvas kickoffs were going well. So you just have to just be patient, because we don't know, okay? We don't know.
Mark, add in.
I'll tell you who agrees with Simone, Charlie Kirk. Charlie Kirk agrees that the Democrats have a much better ground game. And, as Simone said, they've outsourced a lot of it. It's mostly volunteer. Democrats are paying for theirs. There's real live offices all over Pennsylvania. So to the extent that's going to make a difference, and, listen, it's the greatest cliche of all time that it's all about turnout. But in a race like this, I think there's very little persuasion left. It's who's going to get out their vote. And if you've got a ground game and you have gaps in enthusiasm, there's a 10-point enthusiasm gap among Democrats. I mean, if your voters are 10 points more enthusiastic, more of them are going to vote.